Armed forces are attacking the choke point that controls the price of your food, your fuel, and your medication right now as you watch this. Within 72 hours, the first price shockwave hits your front door. Houthi forces in Yemen are systematically striking commercial shipping in the Red Sea. The world's largest container carriers have abandoned the Suez Canal route entirely. 3 critical details are missing from every headline you have read about this crisis. First, war risk insurance premiums for Red Sea transit have surged over 1,000% in weeks, and that cost is already embedded in the next container shipment headed to your nearest port. Second, the last time a global power lost control of this exact waterway, it did not just lose a trade route, it lost an empire. Third, if you hold a pension, carry a mortgage, or buy groceries, the second-order effects of this disruption reach your household before this month ends. Stay through every layer of this analysis, because what I am about to walk you through is not speculation. It is a pattern already in motion. If you want to track the signals that empires miss before they fall, the ones buried beneath the headlines, subscribe to this channel now. This is where that analysis lives, before it becomes conventional wisdom. Let me ground every claim I'm about to make. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, approximately 12% of all global trade passes through the el-Mandeb Strait, the narrow choke point connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. At its narrowest, this passage spans just 20 miles. Every vessel transiting between Asia and Europe via the Suez Canal must navigate through it. There is no alternative. Since November 2023, Houthi forces, formerly known as Ansar Allah, have launched over 100 attacks on commercial vessels using anti-ship ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and explosive-laden unmanned aerial vehicles. According to Reuters, many of these weapons bear strong technical signatures consistent with Iranian manufacturing, including missile variants with operational ranges exceeding 300 kilometers. Washington and London responded with Operation Prosperity Guardian, deploying carrier strike groups and conducting targeted airstrikes against Houthi launch infrastructure in Yemen. But a RAND Corporation assessment of asymmetric maritime threats makes the fundamental problem clear. Defending a 20-mile wide strait against a dispersed land-based missile network is operationally unsustainable over extended timelines. The cost asymmetry alone should alarm you. A single Houthi drone costs as little as $10,000. The interceptor missile that destroys it costs over $2 million. Lloyd's List, the global authority on maritime shipping insurance, reports that war risk premiums for Red Sea transit have surged from roughly 0.07% of hull value to over 1%. For a fully loaded container vessel, that translates to hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional cost per single voyage. But here is what every major outlet completely missed. The reroute around Africa is not a contingency measure. It is now the operational default. Maersk, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, and CMA CGM, the 4 largest container shipping companies on Earth, have all confirmed indefinite rerouting via the Cape of Good Hope. According to Drury Shipping Consultants, this adds between 10 and 14 days to each Asia to Europe voyage and burns roughly $600,000 additional dollars in fuel per round trip. Container spot rates on the Shanghai to Rotterdam corridor have surged over 300% since mid-November. The delays are compounding. Port congestion across Singapore, Colombo, and Tangermed is climbing as vessels stack up on the longer route. Berth availability is shrinking, and turnaround times are stretching. This disruption is not linear, it is exponential. Now here is the part no one is modeling correctly. Egypt is hemorrhaging. The Suez Canal generates approximately $9 billion per year in toll revenue, one of Cairo's largest single sources of hard currency. With major carriers bypassing the canal entirely, that income stream is collapsing in real time. Egypt already operates under a multi-billion-dollar economic stabilization framework negotiated with the IMF and Gulf sovereign wealth funds. A sustained loss of canal revenue threatens the structural foundation of that entire agreement. But the damage does not stop at Egypt's borders. European natural gas markets are watching LNG tankers reroute around the African continent, adding weeks to delivery timelines from Qatar, Europe's largest supplier of liquefied natural gas. Mediterranean refineries, engineered to process crude arriving through the Suez, now face widening supply gaps that push spot prices higher across the energy complex. Jordan, which imports nearly all of its energy, is already recalculating national fuel reserve projections downward. Here is the 72-hour cascade. Within 3 days of sustained rerouting, freight futures adjust. Within 2 weeks, consumer price indices begin absorbing the disruption. Within 90 days, central banks face a binary trap. Hold interest rates high to fight the new inflationary input, or cut rates to protect indebted households. They cannot do both. I want you to answer this in the comments right now. Do you believe the United States will commit to a sustained military campaign in Yemen to reopen this choke point? Or will Washington quietly accept that the Red Sea corridor is compromised for the foreseeable future? Tell me which outcome you expect, and tell me why. In 1956, Britain and France launched a military operation to seize control of the Suez Canal after Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized it. On paper, the operation succeeded tactically. In reality, it destroyed British imperial credibility in a matter of weeks. The United States refused to back the intervention. Speculators attacked the pound sterling immediately. Britain withdrew, not because it lost the battle, but because it could no longer afford the cost of projecting power across the trade routes its economy depended on. The British Empire did not fall because of one canal crisis. It fell because the cost of maintaining military control over global choke points exceeded the nation's fiscal capacity to sustain that control. When financial markets recognized the gap between imperial military reach and domestic economic reality, the currency buckled, alliances fractured, and the empire contracted within a single decade. Look at what is happening today. The United States is spending hundreds of millions of dollars per month defending a strait that a non-state actor contests with drones that cost less than a used sedan. The interceptors cost 200 times more than the weapons they destroy. The carrier strike groups burn millions per day in operational costs to keep a lane open that major shipping companies have already abandoned. This is not a tactical problem. It is a structural signal. It tells you that the economic architecture underwriting American global power projection is under strain in exactly the same way the pound sterling was in 1956. The signal is the same, only the names have changed. Now let me bring this directly into your home. If you live in the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, or Canada, roughly 60% of the consumer goods on your shelves arrived by container ship. The Red Sea reroute is not an abstract logistics story. It is a direct cost increase on pharmaceuticals, electronics, auto parts, clothing, and processed food sitting in your kitchen right now. Your grocery bill is about to absorb a 300% surge in freight rates. Not tomorrow, but within 60 to 90 days, as existing inventory clears and replacement stock arrives via the longer, more expensive Cape route. This is how supply chain inflation operates. It does not strike all at once. It builds like a pressure wave, and by the time you feel it at the checkout counter, the next wave is already loaded onto a vessel 12,000 miles away. If you hold a retirement fund or pension with exposure to European equities, understand this clearly. The Eurozone economy depends on stable energy imports. Disrupted LNG flows from Qatar and rerouted crude from the Gulf push energy costs higher across the continent. That margin compression flows directly into corporate earnings, and from corporate earnings into the portfolio balance, you check every quarter. If you carry a variable rate mortgage, the math is brutal. Central banks that were preparing to cut interest rates now face an inflationary input they did not model. Every week, the Red Sea remains disrupted. The probability of rate relief decreases, and the cost of your debt stays elevated longer than anyone projected 6 months ago. If someone you care about is carrying debt, living on a fixed income, or approaching retirement, they need to understand what is moving through this choke point before it arrives at their front door. Send them this video now. Consider it a warning you owe to someone who trusts you. Now here is something I have deliberately held until this moment. The development that should concern you more than anything else in this analysis. 2 of the 3 major credit ratings agencies currently have Egypt's sovereign debt rating under active review. Suez Canal toll revenue is not simply an income line for Cairo. It is a structural pillar of Egypt's ability to service its foreign-denominated debt. If that revenue remains suppressed for 2 or more consecutive quarters, Egypt faces a potential downgrade that would trigger accelerated capital flight, deepen currency devaluation, and destabilize the largest Arab economy on the Mediterranean rim. This creates a cascading risk that no one in mainstream coverage is connecting. The Houthi campaign does not just threaten ships, it threatens the fiscal stability of the nation that physically controls the canal infrastructure itself. And here's the open question I cannot answer in this video. If Egypt enters a sovereign fiscal crisis severe enough to compromise its institutional control over the Suez Canal through political instability, debt default, or administrative collapse, who moves in to secure the canal? China, which has already built a military base in Djibouti 40 miles from the Strait, Gulf states seeking leverage over Europe's energy corridor, or the United States, again, at a cost it can no longer structurally afford? That question is the subject of the next video on this channel. The answer may redefine the next decade of global trade architecture. One more question for the comments. Do you believe Egypt will maintain sovereign control of the Suez Canal through 2026? Or will external powers move to secure it before then? Post your prediction below and explain your reasoning. Remember the first line of this video. Armed forces are attacking the choke point that controls the price of your food, your fuel, and your medication. You now understand exactly which choke point, which forces, and which empire pattern is driving the escalation. The shockwave is not approaching, it has already departed the port. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see the next layer of this crisis before it becomes a headline. Hit the like button. It pushes this analysis into the feeds of people who need to see it before the pressure wave arrives. Watch the next video in the Empire Collapse series linked on screen now. The analysis presented in this video is based on publicly available information and represents editorial opinion. Sources are linked in the description.